Welcome back to Raw AI Solutions, the podcast where we explore how business leaders are navigating the fast-moving world of AI and digital transformation. I'm your host, Denise Powell, and today we are joined by Priya Thinagar, CEO of Manola AI. So, Priya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Denise, for having me.
Priya, would you like to kick us off in telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your company?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is, I go by Priya Thinagar, but my full name is Sri Priya Thinagar. It's just a mouthful. No one calls me that, interestingly. Even my parents call me Priya. I'm the founder and CEO of Manola AI. We're a consulting organization. We're at the intersection of data and supply chains. We're focused in helping retail and CPG companies build faster, better decision systems with all of their data. Our mission is very simple. We build custom AI solutions that transform global commerce, and we hope that helping transform the global commerce industry will also help move the world's economy forward. We're currently building an agentic platform like everybody else. We're calling it Aerial, and so we're hoping that that agentic AI will bring AI to like everyday supply chain workflows as well. A bit about my career, I started in software engineering, but I was always drawn towards how tech is solving business problems. Was always fascinated, not just about the tech, but that intersection of tech and business coming together. And in my past lives, I've led a lot of global teams, driven large scale transformation initiatives. And what I love the most is people. Building high performing teams is what is the core of why I like to lead teams and why I like to build products. I also have a very deep appreciation for not just the technical depth, but also like human impact of change. How do humans impact, large scale changes? So before Manola AI, I was at companies like Manhattan Associates and Bank of America, and I led product and engineering teams. So building is what I do best. And over time, I think looking at a lot of products and looking at engineering problems and solving them, I learned to connect the dots. And I feel like what's unique about me is that I can connect the dots and bring it back to the business side of the house and being able to explain even some of the complex technology in terms of how a business user sees it is what I've learned over the last 25 plus years. I guess dating myself, but it's been a fun ride. And outside of work, I love to mentor women in tech. And I also support some early stage startup founders, as they're thinking about product market fit, MVP, and how to just build the right teams. For us at Manola AI, and I'm kind of switching back and forth between like my experience versus, what we're doing at Manola. We've landed some early enterprise clients. We've also built some strong engineering teams, both in the US as well as in India. And we've been able to unlock some real ROI for both the supply chain, retailers as well as logistics players within the last, 6-7 months. We've been able to prove out some of the work that we're, working, alongside our customers. For me, the belief is that, intentional change is driven not just by data, but also powered by people. I call it driven by data, but powered by people. And that's what moves a lot of the businesses forward. I'm happy to be here, Denise. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited for this conversation today.
I absolutely love it. Driven by data and powered by people. It's such a pleasure to have you on board. Thank you for joining us. Well, today's topic, we're going to be exploring the quiet but critical shift in how change is actually driven in terms of what execs actually want when they actually ask for transformation. Because a lot of times, I think leadership and execs and companies, they're asking for something they don't really understand what they're asking for. Since you've been running Manola AI, have you seen any major shifts in the industry over the last year?
I think the one major shift that everyone's talking about is definitely AI. what is the right balance of agents, machines, and the right level of human intelligence. I think we've, over the years, built a lot of human intelligence as well. So marrying all of those and bringing the best of both the worlds is something that I'm seeing as a shift. And and one thing that I hear when I talk to a lot of customers and execs within the customer organizations is everybody is grappling with, I have a lot of data. um, I don't want to be left behind my peers. There's this move towards AI and both generative as well as predictive and all forms of AI. And I don't want to be left behind. What's the fastest way for me to move forward? And a lot of times, we'll go in and talk to these customers, and we'll find that where the data is not where they need to be for them to drive that transformation and the growth forward. There's a lot of challenges with the quality of the data. A lot of retailers that we work with, they've had a lot of acquisitions, and so data is coming from a lot of different places. And so really helping them step back a little bit, focus on the outcomes, and then kind of drive to how do we how do they innovate, how do we help them innovate, is something that we're seeing a lot of them asking and wanting to move forward. I think there's also a nervousness of not just falling behind, but also how do you make that entire organization AI ready, right? It's not just about a technology, it's not just about a tool or a framework. It's about the governance, it's about the ethics, it's about privacy, and so it's the combination of all of that, which I think folks are realizing and understanding that's much bigger than a tech transformation like a cloud or one of the other ones that have come in the past.
Yeah. So what are you doing in terms of Manola AI? What are you doing in terms of staying ahead of that curve?
So for us, like I definitely think of things, in terms of frameworks. And so for us, when we work with clients and customers, we talk about co-innovation being at the heart of everything that we do. Um, but the framework actually starts with intelligence, right? Understanding that that's the way forward. That this artificial intelligence, or I call it augmented intelligence, because it's there's nothing artificial about it, I guess. So it's better ways of knowing your systems, better platforms and products and things like that. So for me, it starts with what I call as ARC, and we can go into details of ARC, but it's also about co-innovation. So we have some best practices that we've built over the years, leading data teams and having strong engineering culture, being able to build product-led thinking into everything that we're building. But going to a customer and saying, what's important for you? What's the smallest thing that you think can be that you can take a process and move it to either an AI agent or a assistant, or something where you can get your feet wet, see an ROI, and then kind of figure out what the path forward is. So it's listening to customers. A lot of times, I think there's a lot of jargons. There's this industry, the space is also moving so fast, that every day there's new tech, there's new products out there, there's new frameworks out there. And so for us, sort of stepping back and saying, what is that outcome that you want to drive to, understanding the outcome, and then coming, we never start with the tools, we never start with, platforms or technology or whatever it is. It's definitely about the process. What are you doing today? What is it that you're not able to do with what you're doing today? Partly could be, hey, everybody's innovating and I just don't want to be left behind in this new race. But that also comes in terms of business value and outcomes and things that they want to see. So what we're doing is, getting ourselves educated. We're trying every LLM that's out there, getting ahead of the curve, learning them, putting them, synthesizing them for our customers and saying, this LLM does this really well, and these are the products that you could be using if this is the problem you're solving. But really honing in on the problem is the first thing that we try to do with customers, and then kind of get to in the next steps. One thing that we've come to realize a lot more is it's not just about the problems, it's also about the processes that they have. And just because a process exists today doesn't mean that exact same process has to be the same way in the near future. So looking at the processes and bringing that into the ecosystem to say, if this is the outcome that you want, are you willing to change this process, this platform, this product, and trying to look at that journey is sort of like how we internally think about it. And for us, it's, we have to eat our own dog food. So we work with agents internally. We've got, a team of agents working with our engineers. We're also excessively using, agentic workflows in the smaller products that we build as well. And that's just how we're staying, abreast of the technology and, all the trends that are happening today in the space.
Yeah.
This is fascinating, but it's also nerve-wracking.
Well, you mentioned a few times about frameworks, and we were speaking earlier about a framework that you called ARC. Would you like to tell people about that?
Yeah. So, I'm a big believer of frameworks, and that's just how things stick in my memory. There's I call it less processing power. As I get older, and so these frameworks really help me solidify thoughts. So as we're thinking about this, how are executives thinking about the shift that's happening in the business? I call it the ARC framework to think about, what is really happening in the business. A is augmented intelligence, really looking at how do you build workflows alongside your existing, platforms, processes and products, and showcase value in a relatively short time. And I can give you an example of how, we think about this in our world as well. So we were working with a mid-market retailer. For us, mid-market is anyone in the 50 million to about 300 million in recurring revenue. And they were using a product for fulfilling orders. So orders come in and they're picking, packing, and shipping the orders. They were seeing, in a short period of time, they were seeing a high rate of return. A lot of their products were getting returned. And I think there was a little bit of a panic of like, oh, we don't have the right data, we're not looking at the right things. Always pointing to like, it's probably, the product that we're using, that's just, giving us this outcome. And so for us working with them, we said, what's the outcome you want to get to? You want to understand where's the return coming from, especially if it's recent enough and that this is not the norm for you. You want to identify that. And the leadership was also, every day asking about like, what's happening. So, having some sort of a visibility for the leadership team so they know what's happening, what sort of processes in place, what are we putting in place and things like that. And we said, let's not think about replacing your current product because that's just a lot of work, both from a process perspective as well as just the tech to like overhaul an existing product. Because our initial gut was that it wasn't the product that was the problem, there were other things that were happening. And so, as we work closely with them, identify those outcomes, and we said, let's just build something on top of your existing, framework, process, and tools. What we ended up finding when we built some analytics and some, automated audits around the returns was that, we did like a little bit of a, every time a customer returned, we asked them for very detailed information of why they're returning. And what we found out was the description of the product was what was causing the return because one of the materials that was used in the product was described in a very different way than what they're traditionally used to seeing. And so they looked at the fabric and they thought was going to be this. But when they actually got the item and felt the item, they were like, oh, that's not that. That looks like polyester and not what the description said. So there was a little bit of a process change in how the product catalog was built out, the descriptions were built out. And so they really didn't need to replace their existing product, but we were able to build intelligence on top of their product and help them drive value. So for me, like, and why we think the way that we're thinking, in our organization, it comes from, I'm always fascinated by books, as you can see, behind me, always reading. So one book that really drove this sort of thinking from an, for this, augmented intelligence and, about this framework, is inspired by Marty Kagan. He talks about always starting with the problem and not with the solution. Dig deeper into the problem and just ruminate on the problem, be fascinated about the problem until it's time for you to do the solution. Never start with the solution. And also validating with, some sort of a proof of concept or a minimum viable product, and enabling, a lot of cross-functional, team engagement. So that's exactly what we ended up doing, for this customer, is for them to see how this augmented, intelligence could work alongside their existing products and processes and help them see, so that's the A part of the framework. The second one is, results, or outcomes, as we've all known to call it now. One thing that we're hearing from a lot of the mid-market retailers is that they're able to bring someone like us in, or other, folks like us in, because they're getting more of that outcomes-based ownership and accountability in driving value with AI, and not just a strategy document. We usually will not come in and give us, we'll probably do a little bit of a strategy, maybe less than a week of strategy, but then quickly go into how can we build an MVP for you that you can, quickly see the value of it, get to experience the system. Your teams are working, we're all working collaboratively, and we're seeing value through that. So solving real problems is how, they want to be looking at it and establishing patterns. We also look at things as a product. We put a product lens, and for me, product lens means, we're not just billable hour people, right? We don't come in and say, okay, this is strategy time, this is, build time, this is QA time, this is deployment time. For us, everything is actually baked into, how we engage with our customers. So we'll come in, we'll do a little bit of strategy, we'll build an MVP. We also do all the monitoring scripts, any observability patterns, all of that is baked into the product. And then we'll do documentation and quality, like our engineers, every engineer will do, testing and, writing test scripts and things like that as part of the work that they do. So it's we're paid for the outcome, not for the number of hours we put in to help a customer. So the second part of the arc is, being very results focused, really helping solve a problem and drive the outcomes that a customer or client is looking for. Because they'll sometimes start with, hey, we want a unified data platform. We think all our problems are because we don't have a unified data platform. So being able to step back and say, why do you think that the unified data platform is going to solve your problems? Is it going to create another set of like tools and technology, or is it really going to help you? So for me, looking at that, similar, like a book recommendation for how I think about, outcomes is Measure What Matters by John Doerr. I think, this was his time with the Google team doing OKRs and driving, value, not just outputs, but, how do we drive everything through outcomes? And so creating the right behavior. So, we go in thinking about outcomes from our teams. We're also educating and we're partnering with our clients and building that same culture within their organization as well. And so once they have that culture stuck to them, I think they exhibit it as they move on with other projects and products that they're working on as well. And the last one that we talked about is co-innovation. For us, co-innovation is two parts. One is, our team's coming in with the engineering expertise and the product expertise, and we're also very comfortable with the supply chain domain. We also have team members that have worked in other domains. We have, healthcare, fintech, and other domains. So bringing the best from those domains and applying it to the supply chain domain is something that we do a fairly good job of. But we're also working with our customers who know their space really, really well. They're domain experts. They know how their business runs. they're living and breathing the business day in and day out. So really co-innovating with them. We're not there to replace their intuition, their knowledge, but really to like collaborate with them on it. But it's also about co-innovating, the agent and the human, working together and building, solutions and processes and products that help, these businesses move forward as well. So that's sort of like how we think about it. And I was very, motivated when I read that Microsoft had this new program. I think Satya had put this program. It's called Coin, and it's co-innovation where Microsoft senior leaders and engineers are working alongside clients. And so they're more closer, you're closer to the problem, so you understand the problem better. And then you're making decisions that there's agreement and buy-in from both sides, and you're not leaving the client to hold the bag, when you leave, after the engagement. And so like others, the other two that I mentioned, a book inspiration for me for, this topic of co-innovation and just innovation in general, is Clayton Christensen. I love, all the books that he writes. And, it's the Innovator's Dilemma, where, he sort of writes about why, great companies struggle to innovate alone. To me, it's because they're thinking about the current customers, they're thinking about their margins, they're thinking about, all of their metrics. And they're afraid, the risk to try something small is greater for them. And so they often ignore or, they don't want to fund it. But I think, bringing an external partner in and letting them take a little bit of that risk with you, sort of helps bring a bit of parity to the table. So that's sort of how we think about, the current space and, with the fast pace at which it's moving, that we're applying this framework when we're doing the work, within our teams as well as, as we're working with our customers. And it's worked well so far. We're always about continuous improvement and tweaking. So, as we work with more customers, I'm sure we'll tweak and we might add a few more words or letters to the ARC framework as well.
How do you overcome that issue? Because AI is kind of like Marmite out there. Some people love it, some people hate it. It's
Yep.
very positive. It spreads a long distance. So how do you overcome the barrier of trust with the customer? How can you overcome, can the customer actually trust the AI solution you're implementing?
Yeah, a lot of it is about training. So first is, helping the customer understand what the outcome that they want to measure is, right? Hey, I think this product that we're building or this project that we're working on, and this, agentic solution that we want to build is going to solve a problem for us, right? If, for example, they're, they're they have a procurement product which is sourcing from a bunch of suppliers in East Asia, and they're like, hey, it takes me 4 months to onboard a supplier, and if they can put an agentic solution in place that will let them bring that to, even if it's 2 months, it's still a big win for them because they would have to iterate with all of their practices and processes. So identifying that they want to see a win either in the time it takes for a particular process to happen. It could be that. It could be what's the cost that it takes for us to run this business overall, the total cost of ownership for running a particular business. And if there is some savings or operational efficiency in how you run it with an AI driven approach. So that's, that could be a factor sometimes. Or it could be, hey, given, if I can take the people that I have that know my business really well and let them focus on helping my customers, maybe, the machine does a lot of the monotonous, things that can be automated, and, we can build autonomous systems. They're not listening to every alert and having to do something. Maybe, in the retail, space, maybe they can spend a little bit more time to a customer that's walking into a store. They're not behind the store or the back office of the store. trying to receive things or do, like handle like, a shipment that didn't go out or, a package that's delayed or whatever it is, hopefully the system can do a lot of that. And they're there, greeting customers, providing that best customer experience for the customers, right? So it's one of those three factors. It's, I can do more with less. Everybody wants to do more with less these days. That seems to be the mantra. Or it's operational efficiency. I want to do things much better than I've done in the past. Or it's a time consideration. I want to do things faster than I did before. So trying to get our customers to think about their overall, processes and things that they do and saying which one of these is the biggest priority for you and helping them look at a small sliver of their product journey and saying, let's show you a win in that. And even with that, first we do a baseline with the customer and we'll say, okay, let's just figure out what does this process take today? If you're looking at, hey, it's 4 months and I want it to be 2 months. Okay, it's taking 4 months. Let's get data, because one group is saying it's 4 months. The other group says, no, I think it's like, 2.5 months. And someone says, my data is telling me it's, 6 months, whatever, so there's all kinds of, answers you get. So coming in and using data to baseline and say, let's run the system through, let's put this metric in place and measure it for, not for a long time, but, maybe we measure it for, 3 or 4 days and we're like, okay, we're at 4 months or 4.5 months or whatever it is. And then putting a solution in place, working closely with the customer, designing it, putting it in place, and then saying, okay, we're going to run and train, and test the system for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, see if we've got to the outcome that we want to. If we haven't, then keep iterating through it for another couple of weeks. We're seeing, the space is moving so fast that we're able to implement solutions very, very quickly. So in the first time to value for us is 4 to 5 weeks. So we can go into a customer in 4 weeks, change something, where a process that was taking a lot longer is now, done much quicker, or we put something in place where they're like, hey, we've taken these 3 people and now they're doing something else different that we want them to focus on. So that's what, it's definitely about the training. I'll tell you, like we were at a customer, we put something in place, we worked with them, we put something in place. And the first week, the system showed us it was actually worse. Like after we put the system, it was worse than what it was performing before. And so a few of us were like, oh, how are we going to explain this to leadership? Like, we're not sure. But we were pretty transparent and we said, hey, this is what we assumed the data was, showing us before. We made some improvements and, here are some of the analytics we put in place. Here are some self-correcting systems we put in place. This is what's showing. We're going to work on it. And the next 2 weeks, we'll come back and tell you like how much we've improved. And over the course of the next 2 weeks, smaller incremental changes to the system over the course of the next 2 weeks, helped us bring it down by, 15%, which was good. And then we were like, okay, the foundation is good now. Let's just now, accelerate. So definitely been a lot of like iterative developments and learning and lots of experimentation and quick failures. In a lot of these things we failed and we're like, oh, that's not going to work. Let's just move and do something different. So it's definitely been, all of those. And again, the tech is also like every day, it's improving by leaps and bounds. And so, whether it's performance or, tuning technologies or deployment technologies, I think we're seeing, a lot more traction in the maturity of all of those tech as well, which is helping us when we work with our customers.
Well, they say, you're going to fail your way to success.
Yeah.
So have you seen ways that automation or AI
Mm-hmm.
could help scale your impact or replicate key parts of your processes, especially as demand grows when you have more and more customers that are coming on board?
Yeah. So I joke about this to folks. So I'm not a trained like salesperson. I'm a trained engineer. So for everything, any problem that I solve, always has an engineering lens of figuring out the problem and, and figuring out, working backwards from the customer and all of that stuff. So, um, for me personally, I use, it's not just learning for me. I have to use, I'm a very hands-on person. I have to use the technology for me to learn and know. So I've taken our sales process and looked at, agents that can help me. As a startup, there's a lot of roles I play. Sometimes people would be like, "Who's your product person?" I'm like, "Oh, you're looking at that." "Who's your salesperson?" You're looking at that. Who's testing? Like, you're looking at that. So there's a lot of like roles and hats that most of my team members, we're a very small growing team, and so um, we use a lot of the technology, a lot of these, in house. So every one of our meetings we use Read.ai for all the summaries. We don't, I don't think we ever do like a summary after our meetings. It's always Read.ai notes that we just circulate, with the group. I use Lindy, for like all my emails, especially for lead gen emails and things like that. And I use that to, I've set up a workflow to get some, get some traction, on leads. So for every step of the sales funnel and to get, even if it's content that I'm writing, I'm using a set of, agents and tools that help me be a bit more, autonomous in the way that I respond, and I, manage my day as well. My teams do the same thing. They're constantly evaluating new tools. We love Lovable. That's our UI UX tool that we're using, for building user experiences and things like that. So where and when possible, we're trying to implement these tools within our day to days, and and we've got some smart people on the team, that are also constantly hearing about these tools and telling us, hey, maybe we should use this, and that'll help through the process. So it's definitely, I use ChatGPT a lot for written content. Like, I've got a thought, be like, okay, I'm just going to frame it. I'm going to allow ChatGPT to frame it for me. So then I'll just use my voice. The one thing that it hasn't figured out is my tone and my voice yet. Hopefully someday it'll figure that one out, and it'll sound more like me and not like an agent providing me that. But it's those tools, it's all the tools that really help me, opposed to spending for me. And I'm sitting down to write down, how as an engineer I think about sales, and how I'm trying to make it work. Just not having that background and thinking about marketing and lead gen and funnels and all of those sorts, almost every day.
I think that's a fear of a lot of my clients, at least what I'm seeing with my clients, is that fear of, sure, if I use AI,
Yeah.
am I going to lose my voice? Will it sound like me? How do I know it's still going to be me in like 10 months' time? It's all about that learning. You got to train it if you want to end up sounding like you as well. It's a constant revision, and eventually it will pick it up and move forward with that.
Right. Yeah. Definitely lots of training. I write it like 7 different ways, and I'll be like, hey, I don't like this way, that way. But it's still, I still feel like I like it for like bullets, like, hey, give me like a frame of reference of like what you need. And then I feel like then I sit down and I'm like, okay, I've got a starting point. Now I can sit down and write the way that I want to write. So it's a combination, it definitely helps with some, sparkling ideas. I'm not good with like names. So sometimes if I have to pick a name for something, I'm like, oh, I'll just tell ChatGPT, like, what's the frame of reference, and it'll give me like some amazing names that I would not even think about. So there's some good pluses, and there's lots of like tools like I you know to make life easier, like meetings, scheduling meetings, like a virtual assistant. There's so many tools for those things, so those all seem to help, definitely help me, a ton. So I'm not constantly looking at my emails, and, like even like tagging, I've got a system to tag my emails. So I know at the end of the day, which ones I need to like respond immediately and which ones I can just hold off and things like that.
That's brilliant. Those small little practical things make such a big difference.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we have to zoom out for a little bit and look at Manola AI, where would you like your company to be in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, so for us, it's continuing the journey of supporting and helping our customers. We want them to see value in using AI, and agentic workflows because, we find that they, are going to be more productive. They're going to see a lot more value with their existing teams and being able to innovate and even outperform their peers. Because not doing anything is probably the biggest risk at this point in time for a lot of our retailers. So for us, it's, helping them through their journey. We're also trying to put a little bit more focus on the mid-market segment. We work with enterprise customers, but we are seeing more and more that the mid-market segment definitely needs a lot of support and help. They don't have the power to go and start something in offshore or even near shore where cost is they have a little bit of a cost arbitrage as well as like an expertise arbitrage. um, so that's the space that we want to be in, and we want to drive, obviously revenue, and get to, about in the next 6 to 12 months, at least get to 50 customers. We're at about we're closing to 10 right now. And by the end of the year, we'll probably be at like the 10ish mark, and so we want to help at least 50 customers on one side. The other side is building our agents and getting good input from our current customer base, utilizing those agents, and also seeing value through some of the agentic workflows that we're putting in place. So those are the two that we will be focusing on, and we'll be driving with our customers.
Excellent. And what are some of the challenges you're facing right now, prohibiting you from getting there?
Yeah. Um, not enough time in the day. Isn't that something that all of us have? Talent is a big challenge. We're not Meta to be able to give 300 million in compensation. So talent's definitely a huge challenge for us, and getting the right folks that um, can work with customers. We want technologists that can also interact with customers and work with customers. So talent's a big challenge that we have. And the other one is speed. When we started, we felt like we were going fast, but every day I feel like are we falling behind? That's the thing that keeps me up at night is, are we moving fast enough, to help our customers win this race and really do some neat things, for their businesses. So speed, so for speed, like, we again look at, are there tools there that can help us take away a lot of like the, any manual things that we're doing, anything from our current ecosystem. That's one thing that we're constantly looking at to see, how do we simplify life for each of our employees and our teams. And then talent seems to be the biggest challenge right now is to get the right people, not have too many of them, but have the right number of people and the right folks on our team. We are blessed to have an amazing team at this point, but we're continuing to look for additional resources as well.
And if you could resolve one issue like today, the click of a finger, what would it be?
Click of a finger. That's an interesting question. Okay. So if I could clone one of my super strong engineers, we've got an amazing engineer on our team that um, that that has such a unique like empathy for customers. Understands how to have the right level of conversation with our customers. If I can clone that person, that's what I would love to do if I could do it today. If there was a button that I was like clone, um, that would be wonderful.
Love that. I'd love that to do that with myself. Just clone, clone, clone.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, you get this version of Denise for this version of Denise for this, and this version of Denise for something else. Yes, yeah. That'll be
Careful
awesome.
what you wish for. AI might all of a sudden produce it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Priya, before we wrap up, if you could give yourself a piece of advice when you first started,
Yeah.
what advice would you give your former self?
So there's one thing that I'm sort of, I'm continuing to, learn and kind of grow is, like not spend too much time on strategy. I felt like, I spent a good bit of time on thinking about, what's our value proposition. I got to sell it to myself before I can sell it to the customer. And I wish I didn't spend so much time on strategy, that I just went in front of customers and revised and, worked through my strategy and built clarity, as I was hearing more and more from the customer. So that is one piece of advice. If someone's starting out there, don't think about it. You don't have to have like a very solid strategy. If you've got something good enough, just go. Those things will change. Like I've changed a bit of my strategy. We were going enterprise, and then we were like, oh, but there's a lot of like mid-market folks coming and asking us for support and help, and how do we go down that path? And it was not even in my strategy to go down that path when I started. This and we react to it. We know what to do when that problem comes to us. So there's no point in overthinking strategy, or overthinking even the deck. Like hey, what's the deck that I'm going to use in front of a customer? It totally doesn't matter, because as long as the conversation's going really well, you would have done. And you always continue adding things to the deck, or making more of a conversation as the flow goes, and probably removing a lot of things from the deck that you painstakingly spent months on working to it. So that's definitely the piece of advice. I'm like, just go.
Just do it. I agree. Well, if listeners would like to know more about Manola AI or connect with Priya, please see contact details below. But Priya, I'd really love to say thank you so much. It was incredibly insightful. Love to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Denise, for having me on this podcast as well. I had such a good time speaking with you and also sharing a bit of our story. Thank you for having me.